Hi, everyone, and welcome to TESOL's first Arab American Heritage Month inspired webinar. I'm Tamara Jones, and I'm a current TESOL board member and about a 25-year member of TESOL. I bring greetings from the TESOL Board of Directors, and I am so excited to join you for this webinar and expand TESOL's diversity, equity, inclusion, and access efforts. I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. Each panelist will present for about 15 to 20 minutes. At the conclusion of both presentations, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions of both panelists. You can post your questions in the chat. You can send them directly to me in the chat during the presentations, or you can raise your hand at the end to ask a question during the Q&A. If everyone could please mute themselves during the presentations to limit background noises and distractions, that would be great. Thank you. So our first presenter, Fatma Aldajani, is currently a part-time ESL instructor, graduate success coach, and PhD candidate at the University of Toledo. Ms. Aldajani has a diversely professional background, including work experience at a variety of educational levels, from K-12 education in Jordan, Kuwait, and the United States, to graduate programs at the University of Dayton and the University of Toledo. Her multicultural background allows her to relate to her students on a professional and personal level. For the last 8 years, she has successfully empowered students to thrive academically, personally, and professionally. Fatma has also led several professional development workshop series that focus on cultural awareness for staff, faculty, and teachers. Fatma, the floor is yours.
You're on mute.
Okay, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. And thanks for giving me this opportunity to speak during the Arab American Heritage Month. I would like to start with giving you a brief background about me. So I was born and raised in Jordan to multicultural parents. And I consider this as me being lucky because raising in Jordan is a country that had different ethnicities, religions, and cultures in one place. So I was able to be able to see other people who are different than me in a respectful way, and to appreciate what they have, and to share all our differences in a unique way. So for me, that was very important to shape my identity and how I see others. I spent all my life almost in Jordan. And when I reached the age of 27, I married a person who is also not from my culture, Egyptian, and we moved to live in Kuwait. And then after that, I decided to go pursue a master's degree at University of Dayton in education leadership. And that's when I moved to the United States. So basically, I wasn't born and raised in the United States. My journey started in 2013 as an Arab living in the United States. I have 2 kids. They're Arab Americans. They were raised in the United States. And with this brief background, I would like to set my speech on like what are the challenges that me as Arab living in the United States, or my kids have been Arab American raised and living in the United States since they were very young. And then I would like to put some solutions or how I was able to face these challenges as a parent, as an educator, and as myself, as a Muslim also, because this is very attached to the idea of being an Arab American or like a Muslim Arab American. But before that, I would like to talk a little bit about the term Arab, and how there is a lot of misconceptions from the American people when they hear the word Arab or they see someone who is wearing hijab, they think that they are Arab. Well, unfortunately, Arab are, it's different. It's a huge, diverse uh, demographic. They have different cultures, different religions, different ethnicity. And Arab are only 22 countries from the whole Middle East, because that is also another issue where people, American people think a lot, oh, Middle East, Arab are the same thing, and Muslims. So these three terms, they think they are synonyms to each other. In fact, the most Muslim majority country is Indonesia, which has nothing to do with Arab or Middle East. Um, Also, Muslims are only 20% in the Middle East or Arab countries, because Christian is number one. Also, this is something that many people were surprised when I told them that, yes, we're only like 20% from the Arab region, Muslims represent. And so with that being said, this is one of the first challenges that me moving to the United States in 2013 as an international student, living in a district where I'm the only Muslim woman who wears hijab, and Arab. My kids were the only Arab American in that district. So one day, my son came to me and he said that one of the students at school, he was in 5th grade, called him a terrorist. Again, this is related to all the terms that they think there are synonyms, and they label people just because of what they hear in the media or their parents. Or also the third thing, which is I discovered because my specialty is in education. I had a chance to see what textbook and they teach in the school, and whether Arab represents or Islam, or the misconceptions that they or misrepresent in textbook, and what they teach at school. So um, immediately I received a phone call because I was planning to call the school and see what happened exactly. But the principal called me first, and he said he wants to have a meeting with me to tell me that he really cares about what happened and that is not acceptable in his school, and that he is going to take a consideration of suspending that kid from school. At that moment, I thought that, well, how can I prevent this student from not saying this word to another student, or when he grows up to another person who is Arab or Muslim? And I turned to the principal and I told him, well, I'm asking you not to suspend the kid. I just want you to give me the opportunity to come to school and gather students, parents, or teacher, and let me give them a presentation about who are we as Muslims and Arab. And I'm glad that that principal gave me that opportunity, and I was able to give a presentation to the students. They did not invite the parents. And the way the principal approached that, because I'm sure he was concerning about like what are the people in the district are going to do if they said that there was someone who came to talk about their religion in school, which is not acceptable usually. He asked the social study teachers to tell him if there is any chapter is talking about Islam or other religions, and that's how they let me come, as if that I'm a speaker coming to speak about that chapter to the students. And of course, there was a lot of questions out of my presentation. They were asking me, the students, and I was so happy to answer all these questions because I felt how curious they are to learn more about like, who is this alien who wears hijab and comes to school to pick up their kids. And I volunteered a lot as a parent, so student already knows who I am, and that really helped me a lot to put that trust relationship with my son friends and other students in the school. And then the other challenge is that I want to talk about is in the United States, the Arab Americans are not, they don't have a box to check when they ask, what is your ethnicity or race? So they are included under white. With that being said, there is no real statistic numbers about how many Arab American we have in our school, or even in like the United States, how many Arab American do we have? Because they're all considered under white. And this is something really making the Arab unvisible. We don't know who they are, what are the numbers. And this is another challenge where people, they don't, this is really affecting their identity. The other challenge that my kids faced is when they go to school, there is a lot of misrepresentation for them in textbook and language art classes, novels that they ask students to read. And some of these novels are either talking about Islam or Arab in a very negative way, or they misrepresent the Palestinian Middle East Israeli conflict. And so when my both kids went to middle school, in eighth grade, there is always a whole quarter that they spend like talking about the Holocaust. And this is another time where I decided to use that time to reach out to teachers and ask them if we can have varieties of novels, because it's they ask students to read a novel about the struggle that the Jews went through during the Holocaust. I asked them if they can have more varieties to talk about other Holocaust happening right now and what lessons these kids need to learn in order to stop any Holocaust, whether it's happening now or in the future, because we're all human and we all don't accept to make people, whether no matter where they are from or what religion they belong to, and how they can prevent and advocate for social justice. And my experience was positive. I know I heard a lot of my other Arab American friends and family that they didn't have the same luck that I have, but teachers were always open and they accepted to have my suggestion, and they included these novels in the classroom, which was good because they created an environment where they let the student have discussions and ask questions and be able to open their eyes to different global issues that's happening all over. But then the biggest thing that really I was able to learn from is when I moved to Toledo to get my PhD at University of Toledo. I moved to that area in 2017, and by that time I was facing a really challenging issue with immigration because I was expecting my green card, and then the Trump administration took place, and they hold all the process for all the applications. And I had to find a university that need to accept me immediately in order to renew my I-20. Otherwise, I had to leave the country immediately with my kids. And fortunately, University of Toledo, they have an open enrollment all around the year. So they accepted me in a week and I had to move in 2 weeks. That was a lot on me, but I consider it as an experience that made me more experienced how to deal with these challenges and issues, and how to make sure that I'm able to face these challenges and raise awareness about all the struggles that we as Arab and Muslim Americans are going through. So when I moved, in 6 months, they opened the process and I get my green card. And I was able to apply for a job at Sylvania High School. And that where my journey started with working with second language learners. And the majority were Arab, refugees and immigrants, because the number of English language learners is rising in the nationwide, and Arab are the second demographic from these students that they belong to. Chinese is number one. So I had almost more than 50 students in high school only working with them. And once I started working, after a few months, I realized how there is a big gap between teachers and student, culturally, linguistically, and academically. So what I thought about, this is another opportunity that I want to educate people, because that is the only way I can close that gap and make other people look at me or see me as a person who is equal to them, even if I'm not originally American. So what I did, I started an intervention with PD trainings, whether it's small workshops or 2 days PD training or during the collaboration days. And always my workshops were focusing on culture competency and culture awareness. And the goal is I want these teachers to be able to reflect on themselves, to know who they are and what shaped their identity and their culture, and how much they can see what is under the surface. Because one of the things that helped me be able to understand people who are different than me is I was able to reflect on myself and see under the surface and how my identity was shaped from my religion, Islam, and from the culture that I came from. And with these PD trainings, I was able to train teachers how to reflect on themselves, to be able to see who they are, what prejudice they have, what are their biases, how they see different students in their classroom when they see ESL students, for example, and the one who are from Arab background, especially Muslim students. Do they have any assumptions the first time they see them? When they see not normal behavior based on their culture, how do they perceive that? Do they judge them or not? Because I have seen a lot and I used to give them examples. And of course, not everybody was able to shift their mindset, but I was sure I'm on the right way, and I was helping to create a new environment and change the shift of the mindset, whether administration or teachers and staff. And of course, at the same time, okay, 5 minutes. Since I have 5 minutes, so I want to conclude with there are so many challenges and struggle for Arab Americans. And it's our job as educators to make sure that we are creating the right environment in our classroom. And we are building bridges to be able to raise awareness and include these students and let them feel belonging, and that we see them, we see the differences, and we look at these differences as unique opportunities to learn from each other, not as a problem or issue. Because once we are able to educate the students in the United States, whether they're Americans or Arab Americans or any different background, this is where we are preparing new generations to be, like, whether they're going to be policymakers or doctors or engineers. This is how people are going to live in the same society with harmony, peace, and respecting each other. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Fatima. That was really what a powerful and optimistic ending. So please, I would encourage those of you who are listening and participating tonight to go ahead and put questions in the chat if you have any as they come up. Now we'll hear from our next presenter, Rena Arafat Salmani. Ms. Salmani began her career in education as a substitute, which led her to pursue her educator certificate. Certification, excuse me. Rena currently teaches ESL in grades 6 to 12 at Aubrey Independent School District in Aubrey, Texas, USA, where she serves both Aubrey Middle and Aubrey High Schools. Throughout her career, Rena has taught English language learners in grades kindergarten through 12th grade. Rena holds a certification for early childhood to 6th grade, along with an ESL certificate and an English language arts and reading for grades 7 to 12 certification. With her vast experience, Rena has observed the child development process from early in school through graduation. Rena embraces her varied experience and background as an ESL student herself to benefit her students and improve her teaching. Rena, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello and good evening to everyone. My name is Rena Arafat Samani. For Arabic speakers on this webinar, the pronunciation is Rena Arafat Samani. Welcome to this webinar that recognizes Arab American Heritage Month for the month of April. I hope everyone is doing well, and Ramadan Mubarak to all who celebrate. I am truly honored to be here and a part of this great opportunity. It's a wonderful feeling to be able to get to tell your story. And here's my story of how I turned from an ESL student or English language learner to an ESL teacher who absolutely loves what she does. I was born in Kuwait City, Kuwait. However, I'm technically not Kuwaiti. I am of Palestinian origin, being that my dad was born in Jerusalem, Palestine. My mother was from the Circassian, Caucasus, Cherkess, or Syria, Golan Heights area. My parents both spoke Arabic fluently. In the house, Arabic was the primary language. In the early 1980s, we all immigrated to the United States. We moved to a smaller city in a southern state. Life was very different at that time. I remember very vividly being very nervous about coming to a completely different country and not knowing what will happen. I remember feeling apprehensive that I wouldn't fit in or that I would just look differently. I remember very clearly telling myself that I only knew 2 words, which were window and door, and I asked myself, how on earth was I going to communicate with anyone? I was young, but still remember those thoughts in my mind. We arrived into the country with all our fears in tow. It was the summer, so we had a month or 2 before school started. Everything was strange. Everything was different, from food to music to housing, infrastructure. It was all different. And back in those days, those differences were much more pronounced than they are today, for obvious reasons, mainly technology. When school started, my sister and I were nervous wrecks. I was entering the 3rd grade. I don't recall every single detail. However, I do remember certain things that stood out to me. I remember not speaking much for quite a while. I remember sitting, watching, listening, learning, observing, and just absorbing everything and taking it all in. I observed the correct way to do things and the wrong way to do things. I observed proper behavior and improper behavior. I remember being very shy, especially when it came time for reading in class, more specifically round robin reading. Instead, I preferred to listen to others read because to me, that was modeled reading, which didn't have to necessarily come just from the teacher. I learned when the other kids read as well. In the early 80s, obviously life was very different. There was really no such thing as ESL services. Specific type of educational services for English learners was virtually non-existent. I do recall that out of desperation, they brought in a tutor type teacher who would pull another male student and I outside of the class to go to another room just to practice vocabulary. I feel strongly that what helped me develop my language skills were pictures of various vocabulary and modeled pronunciation. But since no one on staff was able to speak Arabic or translate it to me, I had to learn to translate on my own. It was extremely beneficial to me to be able to understand this is the word in Arabic and here's the English translation for it. Conversational English was also important. I remember many days when playing outside for recess was also educational. In time, we ended up making friends and were able to communicate with them. And by we, I mean my sister and I, we were so close in age and just 1 grade level apart. That first year, my parents also decided to find us a private tutor outside of school. She was a tremendous help to both my 3 siblings and me. She was very kind and empathetic. That is something that I remember because it's in my mind. After that first year of school, my mother chose to hold us back one more year so that we can fully acquire the language and build or strengthen our vocabulary. Looking back now, I think that was the best thing she ever did. We needed that extra year of solidifying the foundation of language acquisition and vocabulary building. Not only was language acquisition difficult, but socially there were many challenges. Culturally, there were many challenges. Religiously, there were many challenges. I do sadly recall times of being looked at differently or being made fun of. I recall very specifically a time when simply informing the teacher that I do not eat pork or pork products was found laughable by everyone around me. To any child who considers himself an outsider, that was very damaging. And it had a long lasting impression, obviously, because I still remember it to this day. In time, however, those same teachers were teachers who we formed a mutual respect for and understanding with. Because we had no other choice, we had to force ourselves to be immersed in this new country, in this new culture and society and new language. Technology was not as it is today, where access to everything you're familiar with is extremely easy. As I close my eyes and dig up all those memories, the sights around me, the smells around me, the sounds, the people around me, everything is still etched in my mind. Everything was looked at from the perspective of, wow, this is so different. This is so new, but it's also so cool. Over time, many bonds were formed with our teachers, with friends, neighbors, families. Also, over time, we immersed ourselves deeper and deeper into American society and culture. Over time, I truly and genuinely began to enjoy American music, American food, and other various aspects of American life. I quickly learned that reading simple song lyrics was very educational for me and critical for my language acquisition. I formed a love for American movies where vocabulary and language development were inevitable. By the next go around in the grade level, I would venture to say that we had the English language pretty much under control. We felt a lot more confident. I became more social. My love for spelling also grew. I started to get involved in different school activities. I thoroughly enjoyed our class spelling bees. I began to receive different awards, such as Student of the Month. It was such things like that, along with verbal praise and feedback, that helped me tremendously. They boosted my confidence. The different ways that a teacher would use to validate my thoughts and opinions were all beneficial. I believe it was by the time I entered sixth grade that I started taking advanced classes. I reached the language proficiency level high enough to accomplish this. I was extremely proud of myself, and I didn't do too bad in those classes either. I gave in my all to maintain honor roll or principal's list. I always tried to keep A's and B's throughout my education. I was able to complete my junior and senior years in high school simultaneously, and I graduated high school, entered college the following month, and completed my college education in 3 years with a high GPA. All of these accomplishments could not have been possible without the rigor and hard work. Whether that was self-imposed or not, I had great teachers along the way. Teachers who had high expectations from me and everyone else. Teachers who respected me, and I also respected. Although awareness of ESL was not very prevalent in those days, there were still some feelings of mutual respect and understanding. I wish ESL services were provided back in those days. I wish it wasn't a situation of sink or swim that I was in. I felt like I was just dropped in this class in this new country, and I had to just navigate the waters for myself. And although that made me a more resilient student, I still wish I had access to the services that we have today. Nevertheless, I did receive the assistance that I cannot deny. Was it all flawless and nice and packaged up? No. There were challenges, there were difficulties, and there were times of defeat. And there were definitely many tears shed, especially amongst ourselves at home, just expressing ourselves and our thoughts along with the day's events to each other and to our parents. I think as an immigrant student, the most defeating times can come from others who hurt you, whether intentionally or not. Looking back now, I just attribute it to their own ignorance. I certainly can't sit here and lie saying that I was never made fun of or ridiculed. I was. I was called stereotypical or derogatory names because of who I am and where I come from. It did hurt, but I learned to rise above all that. And I don't know if it was because of the strong foundation that my parents built for us or if it was strong faith, but it was strength that allowed me to push through and fight my way to full English language acquisition and success throughout my education and career. Overall, I would highly suggest to ESL or bilingual or TESOL teachers to first be aware of the differences in others, understand those differences, respect those differences, and eventually embrace those differences. And I made an acronym myself for that, for AURE, aware, understand, respect, and embrace. And I'm pronouncing it as our initiative, but it's AURE. I would highly recommend to all teachers of English language learners that they must be patient, respectful, and understanding. They must allow for translations and decoding to occur so that language acquisition is improved. Building vocabulary is highly imperative. Using or implementing various strategies for vocabulary building is also crucial. Spelling and handwriting or penmanship, which we have lost, are also extremely important and cannot be ignored. Grammar, punctuation, basic writing skills, everything is important. English language arts and reading is probably the most important subject that carries those immigrant learners throughout all their content areas like math, science, social studies. It even supports them in their elective courses. Generally speaking, there are many strategies that are extremely helpful to English language learners. It is hard to identify an equal number of strategies that are not effective. I'd like to briefly mention a couple that for me personally were not very effective. One was the round robin reading method. For some reason, I found it to be ineffective in strengthening language acquisition. I think because I felt singled out when it was my turn to read, and I was so nervous that I lost all reading comprehension. I found that modeled reading from the teacher was very impactful. I guess that's why it's so critical that our teachers are strong leaders in the English language and are very aware of grammar, syntax, intonation, and everything else that goes along with simply reading a selection or a book. Throughout the years, my understanding of and appreciation for the English language continues to deepen. I was determined to observe myself in every aspect and determined to be successful in every way. Self-awareness and self-monitoring are key. I think learning everything you can about a country, its history, its society, its culture, its religion, neighborhoods, cities, towns, highways, and its people is probably the most powerful tool you can acquire to allow your language skills to flourish. Whether anything you learn along the way is good or bad, it is still the key to reaching full comprehension capacity. Of course, you never stop learning, no matter how much knowledge you acquire. To this day, I still learn a new vocabulary word every day, and I savor every moment of it. I am proud of myself and how far I've come. It's not often that we get the chance to look back and smile at how much we've accomplished. Many of my personal achievements are grounded in strong language acquisition through the assimilation and absorption of various social influences. For example, the impact of American television and music should never be discounted. These can definitely be positive, and their effects are pronounced and long lasting. I know for me, my love for the music of my generation continues to live on to this day. I still love reading song lyrics. Proper language acquisition, vocabulary building are what allow me to be able to read anything in view. As teachers, our job is to be positive role models for our students. The hope of every teacher is to somehow have a positive effect on their students' lives in some way. I think every teacher feels that if he or she touches the life of at least one member of their class, then all their hard work is worth it. And that's no different for an ESL teacher. In fact, I feel a deeper responsibility that I can't quite explain, because many of these English learners are so new and so impressionable. We want to shelter them from the bad and the negative. We want them to see all that is beautiful and all that is beneficial. And we want them to see how effective the English language is and how universal it is, and how so many things become reachable across the globe due to the simple acquisition of the English language. And the same can be said of acquiring really any other second language. For me personally, I found that learning Spanish throughout high school and college went smoothly because it was the third language I was learning. And ultimately, that is what we strive for: students who are knowledgeable, educated, tolerant, and very capable of thriving in their world. Students of all backgrounds who become productive members of any society. That is our goal. I highly recommend taking time to be aware of your English language students, understand them and where they're coming from, respect them and their differences, whether you agree or not, and eventually embrace those differences as being things that only serve to enhance our world. I highly recommend taking time out to do some research on the country of where your English language learner is from. And you may want to ask the student to tell you more about his or her country and their culture and languages and religions and traditions. As interesting and different as they all may be, you might be surprised to realize how similar we actually all are. Also, I highly recommend you learn a few of their native language words, even if it's just to say hello. Hearing that is like music to their ears. If they're newcomers, it creates a feeling of belonging and warms their heart with familiarity. I would have loved to hear an Arabic word or two when I attended school. It is only after a level of mutual respect is reached that you can begin to truly impact the students educationally. So in order to teach them, first build a relationship with them. Personally, for the younger students, I would start off with simple letter sound recognition and move from there. That is the foundation or basis of the English language. That's what worked for me. When you build a strong foundation, then anything is possible. My experience in education has allowed me to witness firsthand the light bulb that goes off in kindergarten, or the beaming smile that comes across those kindergartners' face when they've learned how to read a book, all the way to seeing the happy and proud eyes of seniors who are graduating soon. The very fact that all students experience that same feeling of accomplishment only goes to prove that we are all very similar. I also highly recommend forming relationships with families and not just the students. Collaborate with them and allow them to feel that you want their input in their child's education. Start with the basics and move forward, but be patient, tolerant, and respectful. Understand, or at least try to understand, what they are going through. Empathy goes a long way. Sometimes all these kids want to do is cry because everything is so different. All you can do is just be there. Hold their hand as they walk down the path of education that will lead them to their futures. Teach them to embrace their identity and allow for collaboration among those learners. When you have a variety of students from different countries, they learn a lot from each other. And as a teacher, what an exciting thing it is to just watch them learn while you learn from them. This can only lead to love and respect for one another. I may sound a bit idealistic, but I have seen this and I truly believe it will continue to be possible. My personal experience as an English language learner has allowed me to be the ESL teacher I am today. I love what I do and I love the district I work for. I have walked in these students' shoes. I have been that student. I know exactly what they're feeling, what they're thinking. I empathize with them and their families. That empathy and understanding is what allows me to embrace them all, along with their differences. Make no mistake, we are all special, unique, and beautiful in our own way. Teach English language learners to always be proud of who they are and where they come from. Teach them that no matter how much English you desire them to learn, you never want them to forget their origins. No matter how much English you want them to learn, you don't want them to lose their own native language. Because once they acquire more languages, watch what they can do. Arab American Heritage Month is here, and I'm so excited I get to observe it through this webinar. I'm very proud to be an Arab American and a Muslim, and I am observing the current month of Ramadan. I'm very, very blessed and proud. Admitting that is practicing what I preach. I love to teach others about my history and heritage. That's how you destroy ignorance, honestly. That's what our English language learners should feel proud. Once again, I'm very blessed and honored to have the opportunity to participate here tonight. And I am so blessed and honored to be in the position that I am in currently. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity and for taking time out of your day to be here. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, Rena, for all of those really practical suggestions. I was taking notes feverishly, so thank you very much for sharing. For the next 15 or so minutes, the floor is going to be open for questions for our panelists. There weren't any questions posted in the chat, so I think what we can do now is if you do have any questions, please go ahead and raise your hand or unmute yourself, and you can go ahead and ask. Well, it could be that people are thinking of questions, but I have a few. So if nobody else, while people are kind of collecting their thoughts, or maybe, oh, okay, no, here we've got one. And then I do have backup questions if necessary, but we can see that one of the participants has asked, Fatima, could you explain what you said about 20% in the Middle East?
Yeah, actually, I meant by that, this is based on research study that I read about, that Christianity is #1 religion in the Middle East, and it's not Islam. So Muslim represent less percentage than Christianity, and then we have other religions. So I went with that. I meant with that because people think in the United States that Arab and Muslims are synonyms terms, like not all Arabs Muslims, okay, because they have other religions. And I wanted to say that even the majority of Muslims are not from the Middle East. It's from Indonesia. So I hope that I cleared my what I meant with the 20%.
Okay, so another participant has asked, how can I deal with students from other countries in the same classroom? So asking maybe about multicultural classrooms or classrooms where you have a variety of students from lots of different backgrounds. And do you think that English teachers should include culture in their objectives, strategies, and evaluation?
So is this question for me or both?
I think whoever wants to answer it.
I can add my input. So I think #1 is you need to know your student. This is #1. You need to sit one-on-one at the beginning of the year and know the student and learn about where they are from, their country, their culture, what are the things that they like, they don't like, what type of identity they are. And it's good also to meet their parents and learn from them, because once you know your student, you would be able to differentiate and model your curriculum and what are you going to teach these students. The other question is, oh, definitely. Definitely, we have to include culture in our objective strategies and evaluation, because being culturally aware about other cultures will definitely change all the way you are going to teach the content to students, because these students might have different learning styles based on their culture or where they come from. So in order to meet their needs, you need to know how to meet their needs culturally, linguistically, and academically.
And I would definitely agree with that. And I think I mentioned some of that when I was talking that yes, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this having a discussion. It would be an academic discussion. It would don't include opinions or biases and things like that. It would be an academic discussion where it's okay to learn about each other's cultures and about where each of the students comes from. I don't think that that's wrong because it just enhances the learning even more.
So this leads very nicely into another question that's been posted for both of you. Do you have any suggestions in a classroom with many mixed ethnicities for discussing various holidays? This person who is asking the question is a newer ESL teacher and was once cautioned against discussing holidays in the classroom.
I think I would first ask why she was cautioned, like why not discuss them? Why, if you're coming at it from an academic learning perspective, I mean, you're simply learning, just like you're learning about anything else in history. You're simply learning about holidays. When English language learners come into the country, they're learning about American holidays. So why, I'm wondering, why is it not okay to learn about all other holidays? To me, that's just breeding ignorance, and we're trying to move away from that. I think the more open you are, and the more, of course, in a safe place within parameters and guidelines, but I think educationally, it is okay to discuss these holidays.
And also, as I mentioned, I think it's very important to remember that all these ESL students are really want to feel that they are included, and they are part of the classroom environment. They're part of the school environment. And they have a lot of heritage, culture, and background that nobody knows about and nobody see it. So when they feel that they are lonely, they are ignored, they are not included, that's affect their academic achievement. It it affect their behavioral issues, and I have seen that a lot with my ESL students who just came to the country, and when they feel that they are not part of this school, things started escalating, especially with behavioral issue, because they want to tell you, I'm here, please look at me, include, talk about me. And especially when they are sitting in social study classes or language art classes, and teachers start talking about subjects that is related to their region, but they're not including them. So they feel they are isolated and ignored, and they want to, oh, please, like, I want to say something, I want to share what I have. But they are waiting for somebody to tell them, yes, please come and talk about your, like, where you are from, what's your holidays, what's your history, how this topic is related to what you know or where you come from. So yeah.
Thank you. I think, Rena, you mentioned, but this question is definitely for both of you. What can language teachers do to support parents? I think probably many of us who are in this, participating in this webinar, come from a K-12 context, but I personally I teach adults. And so I'm teaching the parents of your students. But I think all of us are very curious to know what we can do to support the parents of English language learners. Is there anything in particular that might be useful for teachers to know about Arabic cultures when it comes to interacting with parents? Any resources that you could suggest? Kind of a big question.
I can't think of any resources right off the bat, but I would highly, if possible, I would highly suggest, definitely meeting those parents, getting to know them, and doing your own research as to what is socially acceptable, and then even speaking with that student, with the child, and asking them about some of their different traditions and cultures, and if possible, maybe even doing a home visit, or getting together with these parents outside of school somehow, if it's allowed, to where you're all communicating outside of school, and being able to develop relationships on a more personal level.
Yes, I believe also it's good idea to have them come and be part of their kids, spending a day with the kids or volunteer, involving parents with what's going on in school as volunteer. I think this, I'm talking about my experience as being a parent for my kids were ESL when we came to the United States. But yes, one of the things that helped me and helped even my kids feel confident and accepted, that I was being able to volunteer. And I remember the ESL teacher host like an interview, and they recorded it and they shared it with everybody in the district for me to talk about my experience coming to the United States and how um, people need to know about us, like just to give them a background knowledge when they see us, because we were the only Arab and Muslim in the whole district.
Okay, I have another question then. Rena, you talked about maintaining kind of the native language or mother tongue competence as being extremely important for learners, and kind of becoming bilingual speakers and not losing their first language or languages, their previous languages. Do either of you have any suggestions for teachers, resources, strategies that they can use, or that we can use, or that they might share with families in order to help students develop and maintain their native languages?
I mean, just personally, in my classrooms, I still encourage them to sometimes speak their native language. Sometimes they communicate with each other or explain a new skill or concept or idea to each other. And it helps when the higher student can translate for the newcomer, and they're still maintaining their native tongue. And being that I also studied Spanish, so sometimes I speak to them, and sometimes even just telling them good morning, it means the world to them. So I'm still maintaining some of that connection to their native language in those little ways.
Okay, mine, I can suggest one thing because I worked with high school students, and my job wasn't teaching English to my students. It was teaching biology, algebra, geometry, social study, like American history, American government, in both languages, like their first language, because I spoke the same language, because the majority of my kids were Arab, and teaching them in English. So what I did is I used to explain it in both languages, and all the materials that I create, they have both languages also. And then I would get students who understand the materials to explain it in both languages to other students who still struggling to understand it. So with that, I was being able to do the peer tutoring. And so they also learned how to do these skills, because you know that the hierarchy, when you explain things to other people, that's the best way how you're learning things. So this really helped them to maintain their own like first language, and then also to learn the English academic language for the other content area. And with my kids, I did the same thing. My own kids, I spoke only Arabic at home. There's no English. And they would ask me, how come you're a PhD student and you don't know what are we talking about? And I say, well, you have to speak in Arabic, because I want them to keep maintaining both languages. And yeah, that's really helped a lot with them. Like you mentioned that when you have more than one language, it's so amazing how these kids you can get from them.
Juliet, do we have time for one or two more questions?
Yeah, you can take a couple more. Yeah.
Okay, does anyone have any questions?
I have one, Tamara, for the panel members.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you, Ayana.
Thank you. Hi, this is Ayana Cooper. I'm serving alongside Tamara on the board of directors, and I know this is kind of a difficult question to answer in a short amount of time, but how can we as an association continue to support all of our members as part of the work you're doing now and in the future, that would be helpful.
I think this right here is a great step. This webinar, this Arab American Heritage Month, it was so exciting for me to be a member of TESOL. And finally, when I saw that email of Arab American Heritage Month, I was so elated. That to me spoke volumes, and it spoke, you know, you're supported. We're here, we hear you, and here's a platform for you. And I hope this continues and grows even. But I really I wanted to echo waves, and I just want everyone's voice to be heard. I just feel like Arab Americans are so misrepresented and so unheard. So this would be a great way, and I hope it continues and grows just larger.
Yeah, I agree with that too. This is a good opportunity, whether it's the representing Arab American during the Heritage Month, or even all the convention, conferences, workshops, and webinars through around the year, that I really enjoyed and learned from it a lot. And I was able to present in more than one event. And I also think that it's good to start reaching out to more district where they have high numbers of second language learners, and they are really lacking the needed skills in order to reach out and be able to meet the needs of their population. Because from what I have seen, there is a lot of work needs to be done. We're on the beginning of the road, but there is a lot needs to be done when it comes to other people who are not in the TESOL field. So I think it's our responsibility as TESOL educators, policymakers, to build bridges and reach out to them in order to close that gap and serve our students.
And Ayana just pointed out in the chat that the call for proposals came out today for TESOL 2023. So I'm really anxious that we can continue this conversation in Portland and definitely online. I agree very strongly with what you both have said. Yeah. Are there any final questions before I turn it over to Juliet? All right, well, on that note, thank you very much to Fatima and Rena for your fabulous presentations today. Before we go, I would ask everyone to post your appreciation to the presenters in the chat.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you for preparing your messages for us.